And we are live. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Whoever might be watching or whenever you're watching. And today we have on Jackson Wheat. So yeah, thank you for coming on, Jackson.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, first off, tell us who you are and a little about yourself.
Well, my name is Jackson Wheat, and I'm a biology major at LSU Baton Rouge. I make videos, generally dealing with evolutionary biology, although occasionally I'll do videos dealing with other topics like young Earth creationism or uh, general woo. Uh, and so I generally try to educate people on biologic topics as best I can.
Okay. Um, Second, why did you choose the field of biology? What made you want to go that route?
Well, I've always been interested in biology on some level. I've never not been interested in biology or paleontology in some form or another, and I learned about evolution back somewhere between fifth and sixth grade, and then when I got into college, uh, I'm working on my degree in biology right now, my bachelor's degree in biology, so I can eventually become an evolutionary biologist, I hope. But it's endlessly fascinating to me. Every time I read about it or listen to a lecturer or something like that, I am just uh, my interest is renewed, every time.
Okay. What is your favorite part of biology that you study?
Well, my favorite part of biology is evolutionary biology, and especially the evolutionary biology of vertebrates. Even though I do have one video I did on that was on an invertebrate, uh, which was a video on scorpion evolution. My channel's very deuterostome biased, unfortunately. There's not a whole lot of love on my channel for the non-deuterostomes, but
What's a
as
deuterostome? Sorry.
oh, it's an animal that develops its uh anus before its mouth,
Okay. Yeah.
embryonically.
Okay. Yeah, so you just want to deal with assholes.
Basically. Uh, and so my channel focuses on a lot on mammals mostly. Although I will try to shift uh my focus towards dinosaurs more in the future. I know people like dinosaurs, so but yeah.
Yeah. What is your least favorite part of biology that you study?
Microbiology, probably because I'm in that class right now.
I love microbiology.
I
That
mean,
was my
it's
favorite part of it.
it's interesting, but it's hard.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know. Um, yeah, I just remember when I had a friend taking it and I was helping him out a little. So I was able to help out a little. So yay. And what would be your dream job in the field of biology? Like what would you be wanting to do? Like, whether it be teaching or working in a lab, and what exactly would you be doing in a lab if you wanted to go that route?
Well, I would certainly love to be an evolutionary biologist and a researcher, maybe. Um, Perhaps going to different places uh, to study different organisms, study their evolutionary history, which means looking at lots of different genomes, sequencing genomes, and studying biogeography and things like that. I think that would be very interesting. And then I don't know. I also have interest in being a college professor, but that's kind of secondary to being a
Okay.
researcher.
Okay. Um, what, in your opinion, is the best evidence of evolution? Or if we're going to go the creation of evidences. Oh, sorry. I know that was a cheap shot.
Luggages. Uh, yeah. Well, the as far as my knowledge goes, the best evidence we have for evolution is genetics, because you can compare the genomes of different organisms and you can see that they share common ancestry. Uh, we can see who's related to who. We can, in the modern age, we can pinpoint specific mutations that we can see develop between two different closely related species and things like that. Uh, we have things like paleogenomics, which we're just starting to break into, where we can look at some ancient DNA, and it's just a few thousand years old, and we can compare that to modern animals, like we've done it with a few extinct elephants and I think a few extinct horses. Uh, Also, of course, Neanderthals, which is how we know now that if you're of European descent, you have some Neanderthal DNA in you, like 4% or so, something like
Okay.
that.
Yeah, you're actually jumping a little down the list of questions that I have.
Oh, whoops.
Actually, one. No, hang on to that thought. That's a question that I do have written down for later. Actually, um,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, we'll get there. Don't worry.
Oh, well, I also think biogeography. Well, one of the really cool things about genetics is how it relates to biogeography, which I actually just put a video out about yesterday, and I've done two previous videos on it, because you can see how these organisms change over time and move from one environment to the other, and you can compare how the environment changes to the adaptations that this group has, and then of course you can look at their genetics, and you can see maybe when they move to this area, or things like that. So
Yeah,
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 which is a very good indicator of why there was never a global flood. It just
yeah,
isn't possible for there to have been one with the biogeographic distribution that we have today.
yeah. But didn't the koalas get to Australia by volcano launch? Not to
Okay.
mention about the landing impact of what that would do with the
I,
physics involved with that.
I mean, if you listen to the Conservapedia, then yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. I just remember hearing that, and so I remember I'm like, oh dear God,
Yeah.
that's yeah. There's or that they hopped or whatever.
Oh yeah, the
That,
kangaroos hopping
yeah,
across, which is actually a very interesting story. If you want me to talk about it.
yeah. Go right ahead. It's kind of in with this question.
Okay. I hope I don't jump down the list of questions again.
Might fall into another one. I'll ask the next one, and then you can tell your story. And if it relates to it, that would be one. The next question would be, what is the most annoying claim you see from EX?
Oh no, those are two different ones, two
Okay, all
different
right. Well,
things.
then do the
Okay.
story, and then we'll get to that question.
All right, all right. So there's this area of the world called Australasia, which is like these islands north of Australia and these islands kind of south of Asia, like Borneo, Sumatra, Java, New Guinea, that area. So you got these islands kind of between Australia and Asia. And what's really interesting is one of the co-discoverer of natural selection, Alfred Russel Wallace. He was doing his research over there while Darwin was, did a lot of his research in the Galapagos. So, so Wallace realized that there's kind of this divide. There are marsupials and monotremes on one side of this divide, which are the Australian and New Guinea side,
Yeah,
and on the other side you have the Laurasiatherian fauna. You have the eutherians, like cats and rhinos and elephants, and things like that. And so they didn't cross. We know now these guys didn't weren't crossing the border, which is now dubbed Wallace's line. They weren't going across to the other side because Australia was part of the southern continent of Gondwana, southern supercontinent of Gondwana, while Asia was part of the northern supercontinent called Laurasia. And so these observations he made back in the 1800s were were explained as a result of geology, right? So the
yeah,
biology corresponds to the geology.
yep,
So
yeah. Kind of like what we see today with evolution. Yet, oh, that's not real. Yeah, but
right, right. There's I mean, heck, even palm trees have been. You can see the movement of palm trees across the divide. It's very very interesting. I think it was Cretaceous maybe. I did a video about it a while back. Um, it was the evolutionary ecology video, if I remember correctly. But yeah, the so you also asked me what is my least
What
favorite argument.
what is the most annoying claim you see from Yex?
Anytime I hear the word kind, I get triggered.
Yeah,
Basically,
I was wondering. I was gonna say, yeah. I was like, I'm gonna guess it's probably my guess was a big kind, but I'm like, I'll ask him. But yeah, I figured that would go. All right, now what is your favorite anti-evolutionist argument to debunk?
my favorite.
Yeah, to just go through and go,
Um,
yeah, I'm gonna shred this to pieces.
the claim that macroevolution is impossible. And
Okay.
I did a video about it recently because I wanted to show that not only is macroevolution not impossible, it's observable by definition, and even if creationists accept macroevolution, which they should, that doesn't disprove creationism, right? Speciation
Yeah.
doesn't disprove that the Earth could be 4,000 years old or 6,000. Um, it just doesn't. Besides, they actually rely on macroevolution for their arc model, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got to go from like a few thousand species to millions of species
Yeah.
in 4,000 years, something like that. So you have to have this hyper caffeinated
Yeah.
evolution in a very short time
Yeah.
period.
Yeah. The hypo turbo super mega charged evolution is, I think, I don't remember who was that said that, but
I think that's Aaron who says that, isn't it?
yeah, it might have been Art. I don't remember where
Yeah.
I heard. I just remember hearing. I'm like, yeah, that's just so accurate.
Yeah.
What is, and then obviously the other half of this question will be, what is your least favorite anti-evolutionist argument to go through and debunk?
My least favorite?
Yeah.
Uh, well, I mean, I don't. Hmm. That's an interesting question. This must be one of the hard questions.
No,
I
actually, I thought
don't
that
know.
might be one of the easy. The hard ones are a little bit further down the list.
Okay. Well, I'm not doing so well at the start then.
It's like I
Um,
said, it's this is an opinion based ones. We haven't gotten to the ones where I'm actually requiring you to know some data.
let's see. The hardest or one of my
The
least
least
favorite.
favorite.
I'm not entirely sure what my least favorite is. There are um. Okay. Well, let me. Here's one of the more annoying arguments that I see, and um, is that the whole deal with information.
Okay.
I hate to hear the word information used in this context because information has a specific meaning, it has a specific usage. But in the context of biology, or specifically genetics, they don't ever define this word, and so they're just throwing it around, and it can mean anything basically because they don't know what they're asking for, and so when you press them on, well, uh, what do you expect, given your idea of information? Well, they have no idea. Uh, they say, well, why don't mutations increase information in the genome? You say, okay, well, we know of various mutations that have increased gene function or have created new genes, but what do you mean of so would this qualify as new information? And then they usually say no, right?
Yeah.
And then you ask them, okay, well, why not? And they say, oh, well, a new gene isn't new information. It's just information that's already there. How do you think evolution works?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know,
I love whenever they do that. I'm like, gene duplication, mutation. That's the
yeah,
best. I mean, the best way that I've heard that evolution happens is through gene duplication. Is that a gene duplicates and that one's free to mutate while the other one still controls whatever function it was working with.
right. That's a fairly popular one. We
Yeah.
see it in like the slender Clarkia flower, which developed a new pigment which allows it to bring more insects to it because it has a wider range of
Yeah.
petal pigments now. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
Okay. Do you have something else to say?
Oh no, I was done.
Okay. Why, in your opinion, does evolution matter to learn in school?
Because it has practical applications. For instance, evolution is used in making vaccines. You have to, predict where, uh, how the evolution of these viruses uh, will, or will progress, um, or bacteria will progress. Uh, and another way it's used is there's this whole field called evolutionary physiology, where you look at the anatomy and physiology of these groups over time, and so uh, we can learn about them. We can learn about you know diseases that affect them and their physiology and things like that from how they've evolved. Like there was a paper on cichlids. I was looking at like their color pigments and talking about that, how that's changed over time, things like that. And so it's it has its usages. It's not just this field where, oh, we learn about dinosaurs or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not just something that is out of the realm of necessity. It definitely has its applications.
Yeah. Wait, so if you just learn about dinosaurs, why are you studying chickens?
Because chickens are dinosaurs. Haha.
Yeah.
They're there's work with the with silencing certain genes and generating the the phenotypes of the Archosaurian ancestors of birds. Like they silenced a few genes to deal with the craniofacial region in these chicken embryos, and they got an Archosaurian or more reptilian palate to form in these birds instead of the normal bird palate.
Yeah.
And so, things like that. So it's very interesting stuff.
Yeah, that sounds. If you could send me if you have links for articles on that, or you could send them to me. I would love to read on. That sounds really interesting.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. I'll definitely look that up.
yeah. So yeah, I love how the T Rex, the chicken is the closest living relative to the T Rex. I don't remember who it was that made this joke, but I've stolen and used it a bunch of times about the whole. Yeah, if Yeks are right, then we went from running from the T Rex to eating it. Yeah, that's right. We're top dog because we made the T Rex our bitch. I'm like, that is so. I was like, I don't know who said it,
Exactly.
but that is funny. What is your most memorable moment from studying biology?
My most memorable moment.
Yeah, as far as like in biology goes, or like something that you like, you just it was like just a wow, that's awesome and memorable.
Huh. My most memorable moment. Uh, well, that's another good question. Short-term memory loss. Let's see. My most memorable moment. Well, I had a very memorable biology teacher in my first semester of freshman biology.
Okay.
He was he was a guy who so he basically he was teaching us about chromosomes and how they have to become compacted for replication to occur.
Yeah.
And so he brings out this ball of yarn, and he says to the students, "It's like 700 kids in this class because about 300 had dropped it. It was originally about 1,000 people." Um,
In
he
one
says,
class.
"Yeah, one biology class." And
Oh
so he says,
dear.
"Hey, I'll give $1 to anyone who can come up here and untangle this ball of yarn before I can untangle mine." And so some guy raises his hand, goes down there, and a professor hands him the ball of yarn. So the guy starts, the guy kind of looks at it, and he looks back up at the professor, and the professor is like, "All right, go ahead." It's the guy like trying to start unwind it. So the professor like reaches under his little stand and brings out perfectly unwound yarn. He's
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm like, oh dear, where's Admiral Akbar when you need him? It's a trap.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
anytime a teacher does that, they're looking to get you.
Yeah, so he like brings it out, and the guy's like slowly starting to unwind it. He looks up, and the professor's like, "You can stop now."
Yeah.
And so he actually hands the kid $1, and he's like, "All right, go ahead, go sit down."
At least he got $1 out of it, so that's at least that's awesome.
Yeah,
Okay, the next question is, what are transitional forms?
and everything is transitional. Ah.
Yeah,
Um. So the best way that I like to describe it is something is it is between something that's transitional is between two other generations, right?
yeah,
So we all pass on our genes, at least we hope, uh, in most cases. But and so if you have children, then you are the genetic transition between your parents and your children or child, whatever.
yeah.
And so this is what we can see in living organisms. However, we aren't able to do that with fossils, at least with most of them. And so when we have fossils, we only have the anatomy to look at. And so by looking at the anatomy, we can compare the structure of these different fossils with ones, in higher strata or in lower strata, and we can, say, oh, this guy looks like he's related to this other guy because of the similarity in their skeletal structure. And so I mean, you look at like Tiktaalik, for example. Tiktaalik's a great one
Yeah.
to look at because it has because tetrapods, which are all animals that have four limbs, or at least are descended from animals with four limbs. We, this fish had lungs and a head that was like an amphibian, so it was like a tetrapod. But it also had fins like a fish, and it had wrist and ankle bones that were fish-like and tetrapod-like. So it was sort of intermediate between both fish and tetrapods. So,
Okay. Wait, so you mean it isn't like you don't get a crocoduck?
oh, that would be no, that would be a straw man inside
Yeah.
joke. Oh, uh,
I'm sorry.
but
I added parentheses on my question after to the question. I'm like, yeah, make it's a crocoduck joke that was literally there. I'm like, I gotta make it.
yeah, the people who use the crocoduck because it was invented by Kirk Cameron, wasn't
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was his brainchild, and yes, I'll let him have full credit for it.
it? He can have custody.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, the fact that well, he came up with that because he did not understand what evolution is or says, and it's it's really a common trope among creationists to that crocoduck or a monkey giving birth to a human or something like that. It's not someone it's not this very rare thing that you come across. It's actually quite common to hear creationists talk about one species just giving birth to another, and oh, that's how evolution works. Well, in most cases, no. Um, that's not how evolution works. And so there are a few weird cases, like I know plants can do it with their weird polyploidy, but we don't talk about plants. Uh,
yeah. It's like rocks. They're boring.
exactly. All plants look the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Hashtag not all plants. All right.
Yeah, yeah. Um, the next one is, how do we know that you know species such as, I'm just gonna go with Lucy because I'm not going to try and pronounce the other her actual name. I always screw it up. And the other transitional forms that we have in our line are not human but are related to us.
Well, one of the interesting things about other hominins is that they share a lot of skeletal features with us, but they also share a number of important differences, or they also have a number of important differences that we don't have. For instance, we share like pelvis. We share the shape of the pelvis. Our pelvis shape is much more similar to that of Australopithecus afarensis
Yeah.
than a chimpanzee's is, because chimpanzees are this very like tall kind of pelvis. We have ours is much more kind of bowl looking, and so that's how that's how Lucy's looks. It's much more bowl than kind of tall shaped, but it also has some characteristics that are more like other great apes. Like the shape of the skull is a lot more like great apes or the other great apes. Because humans kind of went through this phase of metamorphosis where our skulls, the hominin skull, as you get closer to us, it looks more and more like a baby chimp skull, which is very interesting, I think. We're baby chimps, chimps that never grew up. Or uh,
Well,
I
that
was like, before
explains
anyone
why.
jumps to correct me, I know, we're not actually baby chimps that never grew up. I know, I got
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, oh, that explains why I'm so immature.
it.
I mean, I already had the really
Yeah.
um
Uh, and so, uh, so we so we recognize things as being related to us, because they they have a lot of characteristics that we share with us, and we know from genetics that morphology is closely tied to genetics. In fact, genetics directly controls morphology. So we understand. So based on how we understand genetics and morphology today, we can apply that assumption to the past, and that's how we generally build phylogenetic trees if we can't directly sequence their genome.
yeah.
So
Okay. Now here's the question you were trying to jump the gun on earlier. With the why, if we are not descended from Neanderthals, do we have Neanderthal DNA in certain parts of the human population? Like with I can't remember which was, but I think you said, what was it, European lines?
yes,
Okay, so yeah,
yeah.
why would that be?
So evidently, a few thousand years ago, some humans were getting down and dirty with Neanderthals in Europe, and
Okay.
uh, and so because of that, because there was limited breeding between humans and Neanderthals, we are the result, or at least if you're of European descent, then we are the result of some of those uh, relationships, and we have that the Neanderthals DNA was passed down and was given to us, and so we have about 4 or 5% Neanderthal DNA.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess one other question I had was, what was your favorite YouTube video that you've made so far?
My favorite, ooh, uh, huh.
Like, that was the most fun to make. That, like, if you could go back and make it 10 times over, what would be the one that you would pick?
Uh, one of two, and humorously enough, Paul was involved in both of them. Or
Okay.
Apologia was. Um, so whale sex was one. The
Okay.
other is the light sensitive species video that I did. I think those were both pretty fun to do. The whale sex one because it's just such an an absurd topic, you
Yeah.
know. Um, who's ever thinking about whale sex? And so I think that's kind of been the one
Yeah.
I'm kind of known for now, because you hear when I see people talking about it, they're like, "Oh, that's the guy who did the whale sex video."
Yeah, that's yeah, congrats. You are now known for the um you know, you really just, yeah, that was
Well,
yeah,
if
that's
I'm
an
known for
interesting one.
anything, I'm glad it's this.
Yeah. 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 Now all you need to do is do a Homo erectus video, a full one on him, and then yeah, then we can really be immature. Yep. Oh yeah, the Homo erectus whale sex guy. Yeah, that's an interesting conversation starter.
Yeah, my next video is going to add to my level of maturity, which I told you about. For the rest of you who don't know, uh, you'll get to know in a few days. So
Yeah. Wow,
uh,
we shot up in viewership really quick. Um, but yeah, if anyone in the chat has any questions for Jackson here that you want to ask, ask away. Hopefully, you guys have some.
right,
Because
but not too hard.
make them hard.
The one of the fun things about the light sensitive species uh, video is that so I was making it. I don't follow CMI, and so I would
Okay.
never have seen this on just by myself. I would never have seen this video. I also really don't do a whole lot of response videos, but he sent it to me and I just loved it. I loved it so much. I was like, all right, I'll get on it. And so I was doing it, and uh, while I was doing it, uh, I I was like, wait a minute, I have an idea about uh about something I'd seen before, and so I was looking online. I was like, oh my gosh, I hope that they have American Dad clips on YouTube. And surely enough, I found it because I remembered this clip from American Dad where God's playing with these uh these little dinosaur toys, and he's like, "Well, these guys rule. Whatever, send them to Mars."
Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah,
And
that's
I was
awesome.
like, "Oh, thank goodness it's here."
You got one question from Steven,
All
and
right,
he asks, African or European swallow?
African or European swallow?
Yeah, it's a Monty Python reference.
Uh
To the Holy Grail.
oh,
Yeah,
oh man, I haven't seen the Holy Grail in years.
yeah.
Oh,
You need to watch it again.
it's a good movie. I've seen that in Life of Brian, but
Yeah,
uh, that's about it. But
yeah,
yeah, it's a fantastic movie.
yeah.
From what I
I
remember.
just,
Uh, yeah.
um, yeah. Any other? Not really seeing too many other questions, and I really didn't have too much more planned on that. My interviews are averaging about a half hour, roughly. So,
Well, I'll distract them all with my juggling skills. Da, 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 da.
yeah, I mean, I'm not really
Oh,
a new akin. Johnny Drive by asked that.
what
Um,
about the? I knew. I.
I'm not familiar with. I don't know. Maybe you might
Why
know.
can't there be giants according to
According
the
to the
Bible?
Bible.
Well, the Bible's wrong, so there you go.
Yeah.
Uh, well, I
Oh,
saw an
do
interesting.
you-
Someone asked about Bigfoot.
uh,
Crap, where'd it go? I just scrolled all the way down to the bottom. At least Bigfoot was polite.
yeah, they were coming from. If you scroll up a little bit, they were coming from the non sequiturs channel.
Okay.
Apparently, I guess we scheduled our interview right when they were going, so I guess that's why the viewership shot up so quick. But yeah, because um, Copernus thinker said only 8 watching. We need to rescue some suffering over from the non sequiturs channels who's endured a Bigfoot slash UFO conspiracy theorist.
Oh my gosh.
So
Bigfoot
yeah,
and UFOs. Bigfoot is interesting, I think. I have no comment on UFOs. They may or may not exist. I don't know. Um,
yeah. Hey
but
Shannon.
Bigfoot, as oh, Shannon,
Yeah.
uh,
Uh,
oh,
here.
hey, Shannon,
Yeah,
but and Don and Steven and
yeah.
Copernicus and
Everyone
Johnny.
else. Yeah. Steven had a good question. Do you consider Neanderthals a separate species?
I don't want to get in trouble with Ray Rard, so I'll say yes. Uh,
Okay.
I'm just kidding. He makes a good point. Well, basically, if if they can interbreed with humans, then why call them a separate species? If they can't, then they might as well just be called a separate species. There was evidently very limited breeding between humans and Neanderthals. And it really depends on what like anthropologist you ask, because some say, you know, H.S. neanderthalensis, and some just say H. neanderthalensis. Personally, I don't care. I I did a video on macroevolution where I say, HS Neanderthalensis or H Neanderthalensis, which one? It just depends. I think right now they're considered a separate species, aren't they?
I your guess is better than mine. You're the
I
biology expert here.
Well, I think the consensus is more that they they have so many anatomical dissimilarities from us, they're probably a separate species.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. I'm not positive, but that's what I think.
Okay.
But
I actually thought of another question to ask you. Why is Australopithecus afarensis, or why is that line not considered a hominid line, or is it? I'm just misunderstanding.
Oh, Australopithecus afarensis? It is.
Yeah.
It's so the Australopithecines, what's really interesting about them is they're what's
Yeah.
known as a grade.
Okay.
So uh generally when you look at fossils, you don't ever assume we're directly related to this thing. Like
Okay.
we're probably not descended from this thing. Like look at Tiktaalik for instance.
Okay.
99.9% chance we're not directly descended from uh Tiktaalik. Are we descended from Australopithecines? It would appear that way based on the biogeography of Australopithecines and the biogeography of early humans, um, the morphological similarities that we share with them, and so our lineage, because they're our ancestors, our lineage would have had to go through the Australopithecines to get to Homo and then to us. It's I don't think it's very likely at this point that they are a side lineage of great apes that are not directly related to us. I think it's pretty general consensus among anthropologists that the Australopithecus is our direct ancestor. And interestingly, I did a video talking a little bit about Australopithecines recently called the source methods approach. I keep referencing my own work. I feel kind of
Yeah. Hey,
uh
hey, plug all you want.
yeah, it's oh yeah, I like what Steven says.
Yeah.
The correct answer, it is a gray area. Depends on where you put the line.
Yeah.
Limited interbreeding isn't total compatibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree,
Yeah.
Steven. Thank you.
And there was one question. Where was it that I saw?
Oh, also, yes, I did speak to Hovind directly. I have three videos. It was a three-part interview.
Yeah.
I did a general summary of it. He did a response video to me, so I did a response video to that.
Yeah.
And so
Don.
that's the totality of my interaction with him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Don asked the question, are you excited about your Mel video? Which I know I
yeah,
am. I'm excited about
I
seeing that.
yeah, that's really cool because we'll get to meet her in person. Savannah and I will, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to do that because
Yeah.
it'll
I
be in New Orleans.
okay.
Yeah,
I got to make sure you have some jazz playing, right?
exactly. I'm not a fan of New Orleans. I'm sorry for anybody who like lives there.
Yeah.
Not a fan of the city. Sorry.
Yeah. I've never been there. All I know is Mardi Gras and French Quarter, and it's
That's
haunted and voodoo capital. There you go. Beyond that,
no,
you're
that's pretty much it.
fine. Yeah. Yeah. I was born down in Louisiana, but did only live there for about 2.5 years.
Yep,
Um.
I'm born and raised Shreveport, or born
Yeah.
in more or less born and raised Shreveport. Only lived I only lived like a year elsewhere, and then I'm in Baton Rouge for school, but that's it. So,
Yeah. I
oh,
um
but someone has to, or the Bigfoot. That someone said, please don't ask about Bigfoot. I'll tell you, I think
I
that's
was
actually an interesting question.
yeah, I was actually gonna say as we had brought up Bigfoot, I was gonna ask, do you have like anywhere you might classify it, like where it would fall in the like if it was any species that we know what would you maybe
If it's
label it as if you had to guess from what we know about Bigfoot or
well,
what
if it exists, then I have to agree with RJ. I'd probably imagine it's a Gigantopithecus, but there's like zero evidence that Bigfoot uh, does exist, and it doesn't match up with anything we know um, about primate evolution. So, I mean, it's possible, I guess, but it just doesn't match up with what we do know about primate evolution. So,
Yeah.
but I do think that would be interesting if we did find one. I don't know. It's a cryptid, and I actually had someone uh I had someone come on my channel named Dave Wotzel who is a creationist. He's a young Earth creationist, but he also does cryptozoology. That's like his big thing on his channel or on
Yeah.
his website. And so yeah, I found his website kind of by accident, but I emailed him asking for an interview, and it was very interesting. He's a very nice guy.
Yeah.
It's very neat stuff he talks about. I I don't believe any of the cryptids are alive, like Mokele Mbembe or Loch Ness or Bigfoot or anything like that. The Mothman, whatever it is, I just don't think they exist. So, but that's just my perhaps naive opinion. I just haven't seen any
Yeah.
evidence for it yet.
Yeah.
Now the
I like Steve's. Did you see Steven's comment about what it actually is? Bigfoot is a large. Bigfoot is actually a large bipedal feline with opposable thumbs. All hail the meow apocalypse.
Yeah, wouldn't that be interesting? I was actually watching a video earlier today on YouTube about cryptids, and
Yeah.
one from Africa is a cross between a lion and a jaguar, I think, or leopard,
Okay.
whatever it was. Um, and it was basically it wasn't even like anything unusual. It was just a hybrid between these two species, and so the only evidence of it is a secondhand account. So for what that's worth, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Um, yeah. All right. If you could, this made me think of another question. If you could have one cryptid be real, what would it be and why?
if
Or
I
which
had
one would it be?
one cryptid,
If you had a wish and you could, and it was to, like, if you could wish one cryptid into existence to study, what would it be and why?
um, one cryptid that I wish were living. Uh, mm, I I guess maybe Mokele Mbembe, and I would hope that it's a sauropod. Um, because we'll see. I think that'd be really cool because uh, that might help us learn some things about dinosaur anatomy, specifically sauropod anatomy, which I think would be really cool. Um, but that's just my opinion. That's just what I think.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
I mean, yeah,
yeah. As if you could have anyone be real, I'll tell you mine would be Nessie. Only for the fact I'm Scotch Irish. Come on, what Scott doesn't want Nessie to be real?
yeah. One of the interesting things I hear people is or one of the ways I hear people try to justify the existence of cryptids is they take animals that we found recently and then they say, "Oh, well, we just found this thing, so it's possible cryptid X could actually be out there." It's like there's kind of a big difference. For
Yeah,
one thing, these cryptids they they're often like hybrid. They're crocoduck like hybrids.
yeah,
They're stuff we don't expect or shouldn't exist really. Um, some of the stuff like elephant snakes. I can't remember the name of it, but there's like one of the African cryptids is like a snake with an elephant's head or something like that. And so it's like,
wow,
we kind of don't expect these things to exist,
yeah,
um, right? Or stuff like that. But uh, oh well, it's just it's monster hunting. It really is just monster. Yes, pin elephants. Yes, we expect to find those, Stephen, somewhere out there. Pine elephants. Um, um, Ogopogo. Oh yeah, that's another one. Uh, but basically their line of reasoning is very flawed, I think, because we find something like the Okapi. I've heard one of the claims on Wotzel's website was that the Okapi was considered a sauropod, until it was, or by the or well, it was like it was thought by the Western observers to be a sauropod. Then they figured out, oh no, it's just a mammal. Well, I looked at that claim. I can't find it anywhere. I don't know where he got the idea that it was thought to be a sauropod, especially since. Well, no, I guess they had. It was found in like 1901 or something like that, so I guess they did know about sauropods by that point. But I couldn't find that claim anywhere. I don't know. He didn't have a citation for it. Um, plus, uh, plus, it's also not something that is is unusual. Okapi is just a relative of the giraffe, and we now know much more about it today. We know about its evolution and genetics and things like that, and so it's not at all unusual, right? A
Yeah.
sauropod would definitely be unusual, uh, but we'll see.
Yeah. Um.
We'll see if this thing does turn or anything. They also often are like these gigantic carnivores, cryptids.
Yeah.
A lot of them are carnivores.
Yeah. What I've always found interesting is El Chupacabra. I don't know. Maybe just because you know it's closer to us.
Hmm.
Because of it being in Mexico and that
Right.
and the southern, like really southern and southwest U.S. Um, that's always been another one that fascinated me. Let's see if there's
The
any
what's really
other
interesting
question.
about the Loch Ness monster is that the year it was first, quote seen was the same year King Kong came out, where King Kong fought like a sauropod dinosaur in the water. All right, so it's not at all out of the realm of possibility that this this plesiosaur that people now claim the Loch Ness monster is because it was considered at one point to be like a seal, and someone else thought it was a camel, and things like that. It's not at all their own possibility that this was caused at least in part by the King Kong movie.
Yeah,
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think it's really funny when we figure out things like that. Like we can tie back this creature to something real, like werewolf people. Might be like someone with hypertrichosis,
Yeah,
which is where you grow like lots of hair on your body, or
yeah,
something like that. Vampire bats do actually exist, right? But they don't turn into people. Um, and so I really appreciate when we can tie these legends back to reality because they have to have some sort of thing. The legend of Nessie dates back 1,000 years. There actually Trade the Explainer did a whole video on it where it goes back to like a saint who originally fought some kind of monster. I don't think it was thousands of years. I think it's a few hundred years. Um, but the monster he was fighting was like a lion or something like that. You have to go watch the video. Trade the Explainer, look him up. He does a whole video on it. Very interesting video. Uh, yeah, I definitely suggest you look it up. But oh well. It's only recently that uh that it was thought to be like a plesiosaur, right? It hasn't always been thought to have been a plesiosaur. The first people who saw it thought it was some sort of weird kind of blob thing that was bouncing across the road. So
yeah,
yeah, it's definitely changed. But there are also weird little things. Some of the cryptids are a crypt. I guess I don't know if you would call it a cryptid, but there's this one bird from the island of was it Mauritius or Mauritius, whatever, called LaGuardia. Basically, it was like like a 7 foot tall rail. Rails are this group of birds, but they're usually like pretty small, and so this one was like 7 feet tall. But we only have like a few like a drawing of it or something like that, a secondhand account. So it probably didn't actually exist.
yeah. Wow, this conversation went from what was supposed to be legitimate, biology all the way into cryptids. Thank you, chat. You see what you've done?
Well, see, I don't ever talk about cryptids.
Yeah,
That's never really been my thing, but I find them
yeah,
a little
oh,
interesting.
I find them very fascinating. Just to, to think about, well, what if they were real? They're a fun what if thought experiment scenario. I'll give them that definitely.
Yeah, they really are. I don't know. I've only been kind of mildly interested in them, like interested at a distance, but not really something I want to explore at least at the moment on my channel. So,
Yeah, yeah, I understand. I just more personally for me, and the one that, like I said, the one that I would really love to be real is Nessie, because that's the one that I've always found super, like super interesting, because that's one that, like, when you think of a cryptid, what are really the first two that come to mind? Bigfoot and Nessie.
hmm
Um, so yeah, that's, like I said, kind of like, that's where my, like I said, my more interest lies. Well, I think I might have. Oh, was that 9 for a second? Like 9 viewers. So I think that might have been a record for me. I don't think I've ever had more than nine. I don't think I've had more than really seven at a time for a live stream. So yay! I hit a new record, I think.
woo!
Yeah. Um.
Hey, Jim B, humanoid lizards are not cryptids. They're real. They run our government.
Oh yeah, yeah. The Illuminati reptoids. Just
Exactly.
wait. No, no, no. Hold on, hold on. My antenna's down. Humanoid reptoids do not exist. That's all just a lie. It's made up by conspiracy theorists. Don't listen to them. They're all lying to you.
I actually had I rode a Greyhound bus one time, and my bus driver talked for at least half an hour to the woman behind him about how aliens run the government. Like, he's dead serious.
Oh God.
And he this is the guy driving our bus across
That would
Louisiana,
have
right?
that would have been I would have been a little concerned at that point. That's wow.
No, this guy, he part of the thing he said, and I will probably never forget this. He said the old group of aliens used to operate out of the Bermuda Triangle, which is why you used to hear things about it. But we don't hear anything about the Bermuda Triangle anymore because because the a new group of aliens took over. They pushed out the old group in the Bermuda Triangle. So,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, I was supposed to ask you from Don about fish with legs.
Well,
I forgot the name.
there are different types of legs that fish have. They're these guys called frogfish, which are uh,
Okay.
they kind of walk along the like the ocean floor, kind of. I think it's more like coral reefs. Um, there are these guys. There are mud skippers, which actually this coming summer I'll be setting up a 30-gallon tank with mud skippers in it. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, sounds
Um,
fun.
yeah, mud skippers are interesting because they're a species of goby. Uh, Gobies are very popular saltwater fish.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, they're very popular. A lot of them. You'll if you go to like basically any aquarium, you'll see uh, fish with legs is the one you have, Jackson. Uh oh, you talking about my axolotl?
I'm not familiar.
Because he's not a fish. He's an amphibian.
Okay.
He's basically like a salamander that never grew up. Basically, axolotls they have their gills. They retain their gills all through their life. Um,
Yeah, that's what Don
generally,
was saying.
yeah, generally amphibians they have their gills when they're young because they live in the water, and then they lose their gills and they move to land. So
Okay.
axolotls they underwent metamorphosis where they retain this juvenile trait all throughout their lives, and his name is Darwin. Uh, and he's getting bigger. Uh we feed him like uh red earthworms and things like that, and he's oh, I think you are smart, Don.
Yeah.
I've seen conversations you've been in with
Yeah,
creationists. I think you are pretty smart.
yeah, you're. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, you're smart. I mean, The reason I have Jackson on is to make my channel appear better and smarter than it actually is. See, that's why I invite the people who have the brains onto my channel, so I don't look as incompetent.
Oh, that's not true. Uh, but yeah, so the well, we got Darwin actually from the same place we're going to get the Mud Skippers. It's a little place that we usually don't ever go to here in Shreveport, but we went one day because we were on that side of town for car mechanical reasons. So we went over there and we checked it out, and I was just like, "Whoa!" I saw the axolotl, and I thought, "I have to get him. I cannot leave without him." And so we got him,
Yeah.
and he's doing just fine.
All right.
Uh, I like him a lot. Yeah, I got actually 3 tanks right now.
Oh. Yeah, okay, so instead of an old cat lady type person, you're gonna be an old weird animal collector person, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I really like fish tanks. They're very calming, very soothing.
yeah.
Uh, I actually watch a few. Are axolotl endangered? Yeah, they're like critically endangered if I remember correctly, Beach.
No.
Uh, so we better find a female, get this
Yeah.
population up and running. Um, but I actually watch a few fish channels like King of DIY. He's my favorite. But there's some other guys like Master Aquatics, whom I also watch.
Okay.
It's really interesting.
And and then of course I have to ask this. I mean, you mentioned other fish with legs. I mean, how can fish have legs if evolution is false? So I feel really bad now that, that I'm doing the whole gracious I would
Exactly.
never
I
make
think
a good
it's
Poe. I don't think.
I don't know. I could never sell myself like that. I'm not a good enough actor to be able to sell
Yeah,
like that kind of thing.
I just feel dirty whenever I do it because like I know how wrong this is, and I hate liars, and so I
Right.
never want to be the liar. And it's like I'll do it, but it's like ugh, now I need a shower almost.
Yeah, they're crap, I forgot. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh well. Yeah,
I mean,
I can't do that. I can't be a Poe. Uh,
yeah,
I'm sorry if there's anything I believe that's wrong, then I sincerely believe it. I don't know that it's wrong, so you'll have
yeah,
to correct me. Oh, the fish with legs. Yeah, so it's interesting that multiple lineages of fish can survive out of water, and it's not just mud skippers either. There are, of course, lungfish, which are more closely related to us than they are to other fish. There are walking catfish, which can kind of flop out of water for a time and move into other bodies of water. Uh, the climbing perch is another. Just there are all sorts of different fish. I think mostly freshwater ones that can move around from river to river or lake to lake, which I think can be very useful evolutionarily because you're living in a body of water that's landlocked,
yeah,
and so if it dries out, you gotta move.
yeah, yeah. That would
So,
make yeah,
uh, oh, Beach said, I think I saw they found a new manatee fossil with
yeah.
legs.
I
That
was
doesn't
just gonna
really.
ask you about that.
Yeah, they Pasosiren is a manatee that we've known about for a while, which has legs and fingernails and everything. Like modern manatees have fingernails. Why the heck do manatees have fingernails?
Yeah, exactly. It's yeah, it makes no sense. And again, from a does and that's why I love arguing the design perspective for evolution because it doesn't because I might not know much on biology and genetics and stuff, but I do know design and you put fingernails on manatees, that is just absolutely stupid and wrong from any design perspective because if you know, if you design anything, you want to put as few parts in there as possible because the more parts you put in, the more can go wrong. And so if you're putting
Exactly.
fingernails on
Yeah.
a manatee that don't have fingers, you're putting parts in that could go wrong. Now I don't know what all would go wrong with manatee fingernails, but in essence, it's bad design. It's shoddy design work. But yeah, Beach said this is new to me. So yeah, it's new to me. I had never heard of it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
and
did
I will actually, if you have any links for that, Jackson,
my
please
video
add them.
elephant
You are,
evolution.
yeah,
I talk a little
uh,
bit about it.
yeah,
Because manatees, if you look at like basal or primitive manatees and primitive elephants, they look a lot alike. Wonder why. You
yeah,
know, um, they're both uh, they're both Afrotherians, and elephants are most closely related to manatees. Um, and so the there are these guys were living around like the Tethys Sea or Tethys Ocean, whatever it was, uh, like Eocene, early Eocene, and manatees. The first manatees we find hail from like Jamaica, I think, generally. Uh, but but yeah, it's it's the idea. It's a fundamental idea of evolution that if you go the further you go back in time, the more these different clades should look like each other, and they
yeah,
do. And this is just one example. We can see that, like compare a skeleton of Meratherium to Pesosiren. Well, they look a lot alike. Uh, and so it's not a wonder because they're closely related. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, and so that's yep. There you go, beach. 50 million
yeah,
years ago, Jamaica. Yeah,
yep,
it's there's just there are so many, and this is one of the sad things I think about paleontology. There are so many fossils out there. People know so few of them, and so explaining to people. I mean, actually, Savannah and I met a creationist one time. This lady, and we were talking about the idea of transitional fossils. She and we were like, they're like, oh, there are all these. Here's we can talk about transitional fossils in this group or in this group or this group. And she said, oh, I thought there were only 4 or 5 transitional fossils.
yeah.
I said,
There's
no, 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 no.
yeah, yeah. There's so much out there that I don't. I mean, I don't talk on biology a lot because, like I said, that's not my area of knowledge and expertise. That's why I want to take some biology classes, and when I get to K State, for the fact of just to learn more on it, because I would love to do science communication. I think that would be absolutely fun, and the more I can learn, the more I can communicate. So
Yeah, I mean, that's why RJ can talk about it for
yeah,
so long. He studied this for a long time, and there's so much to talk about.
yeah,
There's
it,
it's unreal
yeah,
almost how much
it,
data there
I,
is in this field.
I think if I remember correctly, I think RJ said one time that like his book with Evolution Slam Dunk still only just kind of scratches the surface of what's all out there with evolution, and everything. And it's like, and his book is just like, wow, that's
Oh yeah, and
yeah, that's
it's a
something.
lot.
Oh yeah,
And people they often don't care because when you read creationist literature, they don't you can see firsthand they don't care about the discovery. They're more or less putting out fires. They're like, "Uh-oh, a new bird was found that has dinosaur features. It's totally bird, it's not a dinosaur.
yeah,
Uh-oh, a new manatee was found that has arms and legs. It's just a manatee or
yeah,
whatever, right? It's
yeah.
or fish with legs or whatever."
Yeah, there's just like I said, and it's like it almost seems like it's impossible to almost at times debate creationists because you have to be almost an expert in about 20 different fields because they just need to know one thing. Well, God done it. Well, no, that doesn't work. And then when you say, well, prove he did it, and you go, I don't know astrophysics, I don't know chemistry, I don't know biology, I don't know geology, I don't know any of this. And that's why it's just like
Oh, there's so much I don't know. I know
yeah,
very very little about biology and
you
paleontology.
know more than me.
I just have an interest in them. Well, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
going to school for biology, so I'll be
yeah,
able to say I know enough to pass a few tests about biology. You know.
yeah. Well,
So-
well, it's more than I know. I just want to take a biology class just for the hell of taking a biology class because I do find biology very fun. I've always loved it in high school, and that's where a lot of like some of my I wasn't sure you know on what I was. on some of it, and I had a really good biology teacher, but like I said, he knew his limitations in biology and didn't try to teach things he wasn't. He gave basically read from the book when he wasn't like super sure on something, and like when it came to like evolution and that stuff, he admitted, because it was just like a small section. He says, "I'm not that familiar with it, so I'm sorry, I won't." He knew his limitations. Everything else he was really knowledgeable on. It was when you got into that, he was a little rusty, but he was still a great. I mean, he's still one of my favorite science teachers
Yeah.
that I had because he was very knowledgeable. It's just literally our whole evolution lecture that we had was, well, evolution is the changes in allele frequencies within a given genetic population over any given period of time.
Hmm.
Right? That's the textbook definition of it. And that's what it was that's pretty much what our thing was, and I didn't like it because I wanted to know more, and then whenever I tried to learn it, all you could find was a whole bunch of technical jargon. It's like, oh god, I don't understand this. What do half these words mean? Like, they're
Yeah,
using English, but I don't understand it.
yeah, I think that's 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 part of it. You have to be able to look at a technical paper and break it down into manageable pieces, and that's what I have to do with most of my videos. Whenever I do a video on the evolutionary history of some group of animals, I got to go read the technical literature on this. And
Yeah,
what that means is I'm going to have to slog through a lot of jargon to to bring this more or less 10-minute message
yeah,
to my viewers,
yeah,
but it's worth it, I think,
yeah. Oh yeah,
because I learn a whole lot of stuff about it.
yeah. I love your videos. I've learned from you and RJ are where I've learned most of my biology from. I will guarantee that's 100% I can say that's where most of what I've learned so far within the past year have come from you two. Um,
Well, thank you.
yeah, so that's one of the reasons
I'm
why I was
I'm
happy
always
to
learning
have you
from other
on.
people. I'm
I
always
still,
learning from RJ too. So
yeah, yeah. Who doesn't learn from RJ?
right.
I'm still trying to find a scientific topic he doesn't know about. I want to find
Well,
one
good
thing
luck
to
with that one.
stump. Yeah, I will find it one day. I will find the one thing to stump him on.
It'll be like the most esoteric thing out there,
Yeah,
but it
it would
it
be
will be.
like I will probably be taunting for about a year, going, "I stumped RJ. I stumped RJ." If it ever happens, because
Tell us about shoes in the 1850s.
yeah,
Well, actually,
yeah, you would go on a long spiel, but yeah, no, I always kind of wonder with some of your videos, with all the information that you have to go through and that you have, is how much information do you have to cut out for a video to make it manageable? I can
uh,
just imagine.
well, it depends. For example, I did a video on what elephant evolution a while back. I think my most recent video in the biodiversity playlist is scorpion evolution, and so in that one, I was looking through the different technical papers on on stuff for the evolution of arthropods, stuff for the evolution of chelicerates, stuff for the evolution of scorpions, and so I have to read this paper and then basically only take out the bits that I need for my video, which may only
Yeah.
be, just a few sentences, right?
Okay.
Um, but and some of the papers are rather short, some are long, but it just
Yeah.
it kind of varies. But it I would still say it's a lot of stuff because I mean you look at my descriptions because I link all the papers that I
Yeah.
looked at in my
Oh yeah.
description,
Yeah.
and so it might be like 10, 12 different papers I had to go through to make this video,
Yeah,
right?
that's why I kind of just sit there and go, how much does he actually cut out? Because I haven't gone through and read all the papers, and I've read through some, enough to where it's like, okay, yeah, what you're saying, like just did a few bits here and there, like, oh yeah, what you're saying is actually for what I can understand. Just to kind of double check. I actually need to I want to get a new hard drive and download all the papers that you get and put it on there for and kind of
Mm-hmm.
do a little RJ thing and have my own database.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's been about
Yeah,
an
an
hour
hour and
now. So
a little over an hour, about an hour 15. So yeah,
yeah.
that kind of devolved there at the end, or did it
Well, that's
evolve?
okay. That is the
Sorry.
question.
Yeah, yeah. Um. So yeah, again, Jackson, thank you for coming on today. I really do appreciate you coming on, and it was you know I was happy to have you on, and if you ever want to come on again, well, you know how to get a hold of me. Just I
Yeah,
would have to
thanks for
think of
having
some
me on.
more good questions.
Yeah.
Um, would you ever, just real quick, would you ever do a show on cryptids? That we kind of talked on that. Just as a
Maybe
hypothetical for
maybe a
fun.
video on the idea of cryptids.
Okay, yeah, it was just what I was just kind of thinking on. All right, well, again, thank you, Jackson, for joining me today. It was an honor to have you on. You made my show
Thank you.
sound a lot smarter than it actually was. It actually is.
I like your
But
shows.
thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Have a good night, and yeah, that's it.